Use the provided lesson notes on state and local government tax structure to follow along this video. So now what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to calculate the following. We're going to calculate the statutory property tax rate, the effective property tax rate, and the property tax bill for a family who owns property that's worth $75,000. Okay? So now, Bishop County has a property tax base with an appraised value consisting of $100 million of taxable real property and $55 million of taxable personal property. The assessment ratio is 30%. Exemptions for the elderly reduce assessed value by $2 million. The county has a planned budget of $10 million and expects to receive $750,000 in non-property revenue. So now, first of all, we need to figure out the statutory property tax rate. And to figure out the statutory property tax rate, we have to go through several steps, okay? So the first thing we need to do is find the appraised value of the property. The second thing is find the gross assessed value. And the third thing is to find the net assessed value. So what are these things? What's the appraised value? What do we mean by the gross assessed value? And what do we mean by the net assessed value? So the appraised value is the real value of your property, okay? The gross assessed value is the assessed value of your property, or the assessed taxable value of your property based upon a tax collector, okay? And normally the gross assessed value will include an assessment ratio, okay? Now the assessment ratio basically is a percentage that's given by policy in most instances, designed to help or designed to figure out what a taxable liability would be for a property, okay? And so, in other words, if you ever go out to a county website and look up the property values based upon the property appraiser, you'll notice that the property values per the property appraiser is going to be a little smaller, sometimes significantly smaller than the market value. Okay, so believe it or not, government officials are pretty smart people. Okay, and they realize that market values can oftentimes be inflated. For example, if you go out on Zillow and look up, the property value of a given home, oftentimes the market will have those homes, or the price of those homes, highly inflated. Okay, so a $250,000 home might be marked up by realtors to $380,000. Okay, so property tax appraisers try to avoid these things and try to assess the property as close to what the property's value really is. So therefore, they will employ a lot of times an assessment ratio. So if you go out and look at a property on the market, say again, you go out on Zillow and see a property is worth $200,000, okay, and then you go back and look at the Clark County's website and see that the property has been assessed at $180,000, then that tells me that there's a 90% assessment ratio applied to that property, okay, and that's a good thing because you generally don't want to pay, or rather be held liable for the full value of the property, because your taxes will be greatly inflated. And so we don't want our taxes being driven by the market, but rather we want our taxes being driven by policy. So that's the gross assessed value, okay? Now the net assessed value is basically your taxable value of your assessed value of your property, right? That includes exemptions, okay? So the gross assessed value basically is what your taxable property is worth prior to exemptions and deductions, and then the net assessed value is actually what you're paying on those taxes after your exemptions have been included. Okay. So now let's look at step one here. Find the total appraised value. So that's pretty easy. The total appraised value is going to be all of the value of all your property, the real property plus your personal property. Now in most cases it's just going to be real property, but if you have a trailer on that property, sometimes they will include that trailer as personal property and include that also. So in this instance, the county's real property value, appraised property value is real property value plus personal property value. So here we have the $100 million plus the $55 million, which gives us a total appraised property value of $155 million. So now find the gross assessed value. Well, all we do here is basically apply the assessment ratio to our appraised value. So we take the $155 million and multiply that times 30%, and that gives us a gross assessed value of $46,500,000. So now let's find the net assessed value. So now this takes us back to our example here, our question. Now, if you go back and look at our question here, you'll notice that we have a $2 million homestead exemption for the elderly. Okay, so now we need to factor that in. So what we need to do is take the $46,500,000. I have a one extra zero on my slide here, but if you take the $46,500,000 minus $2 million for that elderly homestead exemption, that brings the net assessed value down to $44,500,000. Okay. So now, what do we need to do now is find the statutory tax rate. Now, the statutory tax rate, basically, it would be the equivalent of your millage rate. I don't know if any of you all have heard of the millage rate. Some of you all have, I'm sure. But the millage rate basically determines what you're paying on property. And a lot of times, in most instances, the millage rate will be a dollar amount per 100 or sometimes per $1,000 of the assessed value of your property. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to figure out the millage rate or the statutory tax rate for our property. So now, okay, the county has a planned budget of $10 million and expects to receive $750,000 in nonprofit revenue. Okay, so now we're going to take the $10 million minus the $750,000 and divide that by the $44.5 million, right, and multiply that times 100. And then that gives us 0.2079 times 100, which basically comes to $20.79 per assessed value. So that's our millage rate. Okay. So now, what's the effective tax rate? The effective tax rate is the tax rate that you actually pay after the exemptions and after the assessed ratio. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is we're taking that $20.79 and we're applying that 30% ratio, and that brings your tax rate down to $6.24. Okay, so in reality, instead of you paying $20.79, you're really paying $6.24 after the deductions and ratios have been applied. Okay. So now that we know that, what our statutory tax rate is and what our effective tax rate is, now let's figure out this family's tax rate, okay, or what they're paying in taxes. So a family lives in Bishop County. Their property tax is appraised at $75,000. So what is their county tax bill? So the tax bill basically is going to equal the family property value times the assessment ratio times that statutory tax rate, or times the millage rate. Okay, so we're going to take the $75,000 times the 30% times the $20.79 divided by 100, or multiply all that times 0.2079, and that gives you a tax bill of $4,677. Okay, now you could shortcut this, right? And just, since we know what the effective tax rate is, you can just take the $75,000 and multiply that times the effective tax rate, which would be 0.624. Okay, so if we replace the 0.3 times 0.2079 with just simply 0.624, you would get roughly the same answer. A little rounding may make the answer a little bit different, but roughly you'll get an answer that's very, very close to the $4,600. I think it'll come out like $480 or something. But in general, how you do this is basically multiply the $7,500 times 0.3 times 0.2079.